Presenting today is Chariot Corporation Managing Director, Shanthar Pathmanathan. Shanthar, over to you.
Thanks, Manny. Thanks, appreciate you having me here. It is a tremendous time for us, Manny. The lithium market pullback creates an opportunity for investors to get in at the ground floor into the US lithium market. We are the largest landholder for lithium exploration in the United States of America today. We think the US is a very special opportunity. The United States will be one of the big three EV markets, electric vehicle markets. The US is about 10 years behind China. China was a policy-led EV push. The US is by and large a consumer-led EV push, although with some government funding now coming through the system. We're seeing massive fund flows into the sector in the downstream parts of the supply chain in particular, everything from powder manufacturing for the batteries to gigafactories, battery plants being installed, big offshore players moving into the market, CATL, LG, Samsung, etc., to charging infrastructure. And so as we see the downstream and midstream components being built out, we see a tremendous need for US lithium supply. The US has got a tremendous endowment of lithium minerals in the ground, which is yet to be discovered, and that's where we come into play. The United States will, because of their current legislative framework, require IRA-compliant lithium supply if the relevant producers and manufacturers are to obtain the IRA tax credits to boost their bottom line. The issue is majority of the IRA-compliant lithium supply, which can come from Australia and also from South America, Chile and Argentina, a lot of that IRA compliant, Inflation Reduction Act compliant supply is already contracted to China, which means that the United States is going to be fundamentally and chronically short lithium supply. It's going to be a chronically deficient lithium market that, in my mind, can only be always best addressed through local lithium supply, through discoveries of new mines in the United States. And that's what we are all about, Manny. The company has a strategy to acquire properties with surface mineralization. We think surface mineralization is a luxury of this time that won't last for too long. If we look at the oil industry 200 years ago, a lot of the great oil fields were based on oil seeps, where the property was seeping oil at surface. Then those have given rise to great oil fields, some of which are still in production in the United States and in the Middle East. We see the same opportunity in lithium. We think lithium is basically oil 200 years ago in the United States. And to that end, we've got a strategy to acquire properties with surface mineralization. We've also got what we call a multi-asset strategy. We want to go wide and go long on selective assets. So we will be advancing and bringing through to production the Black Mountain project and the Resurgent project. But in addition to that, what we want to do is bulk up our portfolio with assets which we can acquire today fairly effectively, but which will give rise to significant value creation down the road in the years to come as the lithium market starts to take shape in the United States. Our strategy is also to have best-in-class people, most importantly technically, and in that regard, we've got a man called Mr. Neil Stewart. Neil was a founder of Orocobre. Orocobre is now Orocobre has merged with a number of companies, Galaxy and then Livent, to form a company called Arcadium, one of the largest lithium producers. It's a multi-billion-dollar, multi-exchange listed company, global lithium supplier. So we've got the good fortune of having Neil on our board to provide guidance. Neil has also introduced me to Dr. Edward Max Baker, Max lives and operates in the Western United States. Max was previously chief geologist at Newcrest, the largest gold miner on the planet, now merged with Newmont. He was also chief geologist at MIM Holdings, which is now owned by Glencore. Max comes with a ready-made team. He's co-founded a gold developer. They're moving from exploration into development. And a corollary of that is we inherit the exploration team that worked at Integra in Idaho. So we're very well set up in the Western United States to deploy. And that has so far meant acquiring multiple properties. So we've got a portfolio of 12 projects at the moment. Some of those projects have been divested to other public companies and are being operated by other public companies. And that was just the strategy we had in 2022, where we acquired specific properties with the intention of divesting them or flipping them. And we executed the trade extremely well. And the idea was to bring in some liquidity into the company then and down the road. So we invested about $1.5 million into those properties, and we're able to divest them for total proceeds of $21 million USD. 15 million or so has already been realized in proceeds. Another 5 million to come, 5 to 6 million to come this year. And so what that means for us is liquidity without having to go and raise capital. That strategy aside, our focus is on the best assets in our portfolio, which we've kept for ourselves. So we've got a bifurcated strategy. We've got a focus on hard rock lithium, which I think is going to be relevant short term over the next 5 years. We've also got a focus on claystone hosted lithium, which I think gains prominence longer term. Claystone has huge scale advantages, which we see in brine. The issue with brine is most of the visible brine systems have already been taken around the world. So we think claystone will come in and complement the brine supply by providing large-scale supply for the market as it grows. However, shorter term, we're very focused on hard rock lithium, and we are in Wyoming for hard rock lithium. We've got 7 projects. We've got some 700 outcropping pegmatites in those projects. We've taken out every available and visible play. We have done deals with a few vendors to acquire the key projects there, so Black Mountain and Copper Mountain. Aside from those 2 projects, we've got 5 other projects which we've staked ourselves in Wyoming. Black Mountain is our core focus currently. We have drilled the Black Mountain property. We embarked on drilling immediately after our IPO. That was in October 2023. The harsh Wyoming winter was upon us. We decided to persist with a winter drilling program. We have intersected real ore-grade mineralization, albeit in relatively narrow vein structures. So we think we've hit the outer branches of a fairly significant pegmatite system, and there are other indicators which are suggesting that, which I'll touch on shortly. Previously, as I said, we've drilled in the midst of winter, and we couldn't get over the sweet spot in the geology because the track leading to that drill pad was a little bit too steep for the truck-mounted rig. It's not the North American summer is upon us, so we are going to remobilize with a man-portable rig. We're going to do about 4,000 meters of diamond core drilling with a man-portable rig. The beauty of a man-portable rig is we will be able to walk it over to the drill pad and situate the rig directly over the sweet spot in the geology. So that's the objective short term in this North American summer. We're also doing extensive geochemical testing, and the geochemical analysis so far has been resoundingly positive. What it's indicating is that the various ratios of the various geochemical markers are indicating a pretty significant highly fractionated and potentially large ore body system at Black Mountain. So the status is we've drilled, we've hit in 3 holes. We'll go back out there during the North American summer and do about 4,000 meters of diamond drilling, this time with a man-portable rig. Following that, we'll head back out there with a truck-mounted rig to do a resource drill out. So that's the pathway for Black Mountain. The other project in our portfolio is the Resurgent project. That is our core claystone project. We're waiting for approvals from the Department of Gaming, Industries and Fisheries in Oregon to be able to go and drill that. That property straddles Nevada and Oregon. It is situated inside the McDermott Caldera, which is the largest and highest grade claystone hosted lithium play on the planet. Our neighbor is Thacker Pass, or Lithium Americas. They are developing the Thacker Pass project, which will be the first to produce lithium carbonate from claystone hosted lithium. That project is very well supported. So the US government has committed $2.26 billion at Treasury plus zero debt funding for that project. And General Motors have committed $650 million USD. So total build cost of roughly $3 billion USD. The project is expected to come to fruition in 2026. I see that as a real litmus test for the claystone hosted lithium asset class as a whole. We have positioned ourselves very fortunately in that asset class. So we are the second largest landholder in the McDermott Caldera, and we've got 3 properties being operated by 3 other juniors. One is Pan American Energy. They've drilled a 10 million ton resource. So that in that company, we've got roughly a 21% stake. Chariot has a minority position in that 21%, by the way. And so overall, very well positioned. I see this as a ground floor opportunity for investors to get into a generational investment opportunity in the United States. This is oil 2.0 in the US. So what happened in the US 200 years ago is happening in lithium. The United States has the potential to become self-sufficient pending discoveries of major lithium deposits. And we have positioned ourselves in the Western United States, which we think are the better states to be positioned in. Wyoming, it's underpopulated. Nevada, both are 1 and 2 ranked on the Fraser Institute in the US. Ideal locations, and the geology is also extremely favorable in both locations.
Okay, Shanthar, thank you for that. And before we wrap up, there's a couple of questions for you if you've got some time. Coming back to now, and you've touched on this during the presentation. Some of these grants and some of this assistance from the US government. So there's been large capital inflows into the US EV sector in the form of grants. You did mention the help the US government has provided at Thacker Pass. Is there any potential for Chariot to become involved in some of that grant money or some of that type of funding?
Manny, we're in touch with various firms, lobby and legal firms in order to procure this funding. I think it comes down the road for us. I think our focus needs to be on defining a resource. And if we look at the various packages of funding, it's all very much directed to the downstream, so anything with a processing element to it. So we fully expect, similar to our peers, Ioneer, Lithium Americas, American Lithium, so on, they've all got funding from the US government, $50 million north each. We fully expect to get that type of funding, but it'll happen down the road. Okay,
understood. And another question for you, have you seen much interest from potential off-takers with regards to your current projects? Have there been a few knocking on the door, talking about offtake potentially, or some form of support as well down the road?
Sure. We can only sort of describe them by category. So we are talking to some EV car makers, electric vehicle car makers, because of confidentiality reasons, can't elaborate on that. We are talking to some major mining houses and trading houses in Japan as well. So we can't give specific names outside of that.
Okay, and just one last question before we wrap it up. In terms of in the US, dealing with the stakeholders can sometimes be a challenge, and dealing with the authorities. How have you found the the process so far with regards to those stakeholders, whether they be Indigenous type, tribal issues, or whether it's more domestic government type scenarios? How have you? What's the experience been like thus far?
Look, Manny, I'll couch it in sort of general terms. The US is a very pragmatic business environment, right? So post the Gulf Wars, when they needed oil, they retooled, repurposed, and accessed a totally new type of oil reservoir through fracking, and have become one of the largest oil suppliers in the world today, oil producers in the world. I see that happening in mining. They've gone quiet on mining because their city building phase, ended decades ago. But for this energy transition, they're going to need metals. And the energy transition is very much about storing energy in metals. So to that end, I see the US retooling, repurposing for specifically lithium supply, because it's going to need a lot. I think irrespective of what the government is, Democrats or Republicans, I believe both governments will be pragmatic, practical minded. You've got China's at 41% electric vehicle penetration, Norway's at 90%. It is a superior technology. It's had slower traction in the US, so it's about a 5% electric vehicle sales penetration this is at the moment. But that's because the US is a consumer-led economy. China wanted to get out ahead through its policies and government funding. So I think in general terms, the regulators, the government entities will be supportive. We're already seeing that under this administration. I think it'll continue with the next administration. And then in terms of the First Nations issue, we will likely follow the template of Lithium Americas, and the strategy will be to get ahead of it, right? So get out in front of the issue and start engaging the First Nations communities, and we are approaching people in that regard.
Great, Shanthar, that was fantastic. Thank you very much for your time today, and please have a great weekend. We'll see you. We'll try and get you back soon.
You too, Manny. Appreciate that.